night of October 31st, 2019 was alive with noise across the country. Halloween masks, laughter, music, and drunken celebrations filled the streets of most American towns. But on the outskirts of Ravenswood, silence ruled. The small town lay pressed against dense woods and low hills, cut off from the rest of the world as if forgotten on purpose. That night, the darkness felt heavier than usual, not merely the absence of light, but the presence of something unseen. The wind moved through dead leaves with a sound that resembled a sick man's whisper, and the moon hid behind thick clouds, unwilling to watch what was about to unfold. At exactly 3:02 a.m., the phone rang inside the 911 Emergency Response Center. Mark Thompson, the night operator, barely looked up. Halloween always brought prank calls, drunken jokes, and fake screams. He answered out of habit, already tired. 911, what's your emergency? He said. The response was not laughter, not shouting, not chaos. There was only breathing, slow, uneven, exhausted breathing, as if the person on the other end had been holding herself together for far too long. "I need help, please," the woman whispered. Her voice did not sound panicked. It sounded worn down. Mark straightened in his chair, instinctively sensing that this call was different. He asked her name, asked if she was safe. For several seconds there was silence, followed by a deep breath that trembled slightly before she spoke again. "I did something," she said, "something very bad." Mark's fingers froze above the keyboard. He asked if anyone was hurt. The line went quiet again. Then her voice returned, softer this time, almost empty. "He isn't breathing anymore." The call disconnected immediately. The sudden silence felt unnatural, as if the room itself had stopped listening. Mark initiated a call trace. The location appeared on his screen. Ravenswood Hills, an old Victorian property deep in the wooded area beyond the town. The name struck a faint chord in his memory. That house had a reputation. Stories clung to it like rot, whispered in bars and passed down through years of rumor. 15 minutes later, police cruisers sped down the narrow dirt road leading into the forest. Red and blue lights cut through the trees, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach for the vehicles as they passed. When the officers arrived, the front door of the house stood half open. A sharp, metallic scent mixed with damp air drifted out. No one needed training to recognize it. Blood had a smell. Inside, the walls were marked with dark splatters, uneven and violent, evidence of a desperate struggle. Drag marks streaked the floor toward the basement stairs. At the bottom of those steps lay a man's body. His eyes were open, frozen wide, his face locked in an expression of terror so intense it looked unfinished, as if death had interrupted his final thought. But even that was not the most disturbing sight in the house. In the corner of the living room, seated on an old wooden chair, was a woman dressed in white. Her clothes were stained red, her fingers loosely intertwined in her lap. She was completely still. There was no fear on her face, no shock, only a faint, unsettling calm and the slightest hint of a smile. Her name was Elena Carter. She was 25 years old, an art teacher. The question was not what had happened inside the house. That much was obvious. The real question was how someone like Elena Carter had arrived at this moment. The answer could not be found in police reports or forensic photos. It lived 6 months in the past, buried in memories that began with affection and ended in fear. 6 months earlier, Elena's life had been full of color. She taught children how to paint, how to see beauty where others saw nothing. She believed art could heal people, that kindness could change lives. She trusted easily, loved openly, and thought that love, if given honestly, always made people better. She did not yet know that some people used love as a tool, shaping it into something sharp enough to cut. She met Mark Davidson in an art gallery. He stood apart from everyone else, confident and composed, with a voice that carried authority without effort. He spoke to her as if he understood her thoughts, as if he saw something special in her. Elena felt noticed in a way she never had before. That feeling pulled her in, and she did not see the imbalance forming beneath it. The months that followed felt unreal. Expensive dinners, constant attention, grand gestures that made Elena feel chosen. When Mark proposed, she said yes without hesitation. She did not recognize the conditions hidden beneath his affection. After the wedding, he took her far from the city to a large Victorian house surrounded by trees, isolated and quiet. He called it their sanctuary. Elena believed him. The first blow came without warning, a single slap delivered in anger, followed by tears and apologies. Elena told herself it was a mistake. She wanted to believe that love could not turn violent. But violence rarely arrives alone. It grows. And by the time Elena understood what was happening, she was already trapped in it. After the first strike, apologies followed quickly. Mark cried, held Elena's hands, swore it would never happen again. He blamed stress, work pressure, exhaustion, anything but himself. Elena wanted to believe him because believing was easier than facing the truth. She told herself that everyone made mistakes, that love sometimes stumbled. What she did not understand was that the apology was not an end, it was permission. The weeks that followed reshaped her life in small, almost invisible ways. Mark began questioning who she spoke to and why. He asked about messages, calls, even casual conversations. At first, it sounded like concern. He said the world was full of bad people and that he only wanted to protect her. Slowly, the questions became accusations. If Elena defended herself, his voice grew cold. If she stayed quiet, his anger found another excuse. He started deciding what she wore, what she cooked, when she slept. Her phone disappeared one evening and returned shattered the next morning. Her calls to her mother stopped without explanation. Whenever Elena protested, Mark reminded her of how much he had given up for her, how much he loved her. He said that if she truly cared, she would not argue. Love, he explained, required sacrifice.
The house itself began to feel different. What once seemed peaceful now felt watchful. The long hallways echoed too loudly. The walls felt closer at night. Elena often lay awake, listening to Mark's breathing beside her, wondering how a man could sleep so peacefully after making another human being afraid. She avoided mirrors because the reflection staring back felt unfamiliar. eyes dulled, shoulders tense, a constant readiness for impact. Violence became routine. Sometimes it came as a shove, sometimes as a slap, sometimes as silence stretched so thin it hurt. Afterward came affection, gentle words, promises whispered into her hair. Mark convinced her that every fight was her fault. If she spoke differently, acted better, obeyed sooner, none of it would happen. Slowly, Elena began to believe him. Her confidence eroded until guilt replaced it. By late summer, her world had shrunk to the size of the house. The woods surrounding it felt like a barrier rather than a landscape. She imagined screaming and hearing nothing in response. The isolation settled into her bones. She stopped thinking about leaving because imagining freedom hurt more than accepting captivity. Then came the night she tried to run. September hung heavy with heat, and Mark had fallen asleep early. Elena waited, counting his breaths, measuring the silence. Her body shook as she moved toward the front door, every step filled with dread. Her hand wrapped around the lock. For one brief moment, she imagined the road beyond the trees, imagined walking until someone noticed her. The click of the latch sounded louder than a gunshot. "Where do you think you're going?" Mark's voice came from behind her, calm and amused. He stood in the hallway holding a metal rod, his eyes bright with something that made Elena's blood turn cold. He did not shout, he did not argue, he simply acted. Pain came in fragments, sharp and overwhelming until she lost track of time. He dragged her toward the basement door, a place she had been forbidden to enter. When he opened it, a wave of damp air and decay rolled out. He shoved her forward, and she tumbled down the stairs into darkness. The door slammed shut above her. The sound of the lock sliding into place echoed louder than her sobs. The basement swallowed time. There was no light, only shadows layered upon shadows. Water dripped somewhere steadily, marking seconds that felt endless. Rats brushed against her legs. Thirst burned her throat until she cried without tears. She screamed at first, then begged, then whispered. Eventually, she stopped making noise altogether. In that darkness, something inside her broke completely. The part of her that believed in patience, forgiveness, and understanding faded away. Survival replaced hope. She realized that the man upstairs was not confused or damaged. He was deliberate, and if she ever wanted to live alive, she would have to become deliberate too.
When the door finally opened 3 days later, Elena did not flinch. She did not cry. She climbed the stairs slowly, her face blank. Mark studied her and smiled. He believed he had won. He believed fear had erased her will. What he failed to understand was that fear had only sharpened it. October arrived quietly. Elena's behavior changed in ways so subtle that Mark welcomed them. She stopped questioning him, stopped reacting, stopped crying. She followed routines with precision, cooked his meals on time, kept the house clean, and met his eyes when he spoke. Her obedience felt genuine, and Mark mistook her silence for surrender. He believed fear had done its work. What he did not recognize was that silence can also be preparation. At night, when Mark slept deeply, Elena lay awake staring into the darkness. Her thoughts were no longer chaotic.
They were organized, methodical. She counted hours, memorized habits, and studied his patterns. Slowly, carefully, she began to collect what she needed. A knife disappeared from the kitchen drawer, then another days later. She hid them in her old art box beneath dried paint and forgotten brushes. Sleeping pills followed, taken one at a time from Mark's supply so the absence would go unnoticed. Each night, her resolve hardened. Fear no longer controlled her. Control had changed hands. October Halloween night came at last. For Mark, it was a celebration like any other. For Elena, it was an ending. She prepared his favorite meal, set the table neatly, and lit candles that cast warm shadows across the room. Her calm pleased him. He smiled, convinced that the woman before him had finally accepted her place. Elena poured the wine herself, dissolving the pills carefully until they vanished completely. Mark drank freely, laughing, relaxed, unaware that each swallow carried him closer to unconsciousness. His speech slowed, his eyelids drooped. When he collapsed onto the couch, Elena waited until his breathing deepened. Then she moved without hesitation. She bound his wrists and ankles, dragged him across the floor, and pulled him down the basement stairs. The same walls, the same damp air, the same darkness. Only the roles had reversed. Mark woke in confusion, then panic. He shouted, threatened, begged. Elena stood before him with a lantern, her face expressionless. She did not rush, she did not strike. She allowed him to feel every second of uncertainty. Time stretched painfully inside the basement. Hours blurred into days. Mark's voice weakened, his arrogance dissolved, and fear hollowed him out. Elena watched detached as the man who once controlled her unraveled. On the fourth morning, Elena lifted the rope. There was no hatred in her expression, no satisfaction, only finality. When it was over, the basement fell silent. Elena stood there for a long moment, breathing steadily, as if releasing air she had been holding for months. She cleaned the house carefully. She showered. She dressed in white. When she called 911, her voice was calm, measured, complete. The words she spoke ended everything. Elena Carter now lives behind bars. To the world, she is a murderer. To the law, she is guilty. But in the quiet hours, sitting alone with canvas and paint, she creates blue skies and open fields, birds rising freely into the air. In those moments, she feels something she had not felt in a very long time. Freedom. Because on that Halloween night, Elena did not only take a life, she destroyed the fear that had been slowly killing her.